Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 3, Episode 4 of Jack Ryan. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off on the Russian side of things. It didn't even cross my mind to think about how Luca would have to spin it, because it's like, right, how would you explain Constantine's death? And it's like, oh, I'm gonna spin it that Constantine was the mole. He was working with the Americans. He was going to try and kill me, so I had to kill him first. But yeah, he was working with that CIA agent, Jack Ryan. This whole thing was a trap. I was like, that's actually pretty smart. And also just use your own text messages that you had on your phone and just make it seem like, yeah, it's from Constantine. And now he's grilling Alexei like, yo, did you set me up? And it's like putting Alexei on the defensive, also making him think like, all right, like who could have said that? Was it just a Constantine thing, or was it someone else inside of this group that made that decision? Kind of keeping him a little like, all right, like a little distrusting of his group, because Constantine's point is to also keep him isolated, because it's like, right, if Alexei is less likely to trust other people, it means he kind of keeps that a little in-house, and he's most likely only going to keep Luca nearby because he believes Luca to be someone that he can trust under these circumstances. So that is the interesting situation. And obviously, because of the NATO missiles in the Czech Republic, the Russian president is kind of forced to make his move too. So it's like, cool, let's put our people in a certain position near like the Slovakian border. And it's like, yeah, but that would also put us in position of like a Czech Republic, like air base or something like that. And Alexei's like, yeah, that would kind of be a bonus addition to it. And he's like, yeah, go ahead. And any of our, like the US or whatever that might be having satellites or whatever over that area, make sure they see what we're doing. Like we want them to know what we're doing. So kind of playing into this whole game, like everyone is, the Czech Republic, the US, NATO, or even the people who aren't part of trying to revive the Soviet Union, like everyone in Russia that's just kind of doing what they believe they're doing is right. So there was one person, I forgot what his actual position is, Mikhail, like what his actual position is, but Luca got to him because he's trying to find out other members. But Alexei's smart, and certain people only knew certain, that's how you keep something so tight-lipped, is you don't let certain people know the entire board. Like probably not everyone knows. Probably like only people who know everyone that's involved is probably Alexei and Peter. I kept saying his name like Peter, like because there is no, it's like P-E-T-R, but it's still just pronounced like Peter. I figured they'd kind of put a little stank on it. Like feels weird to say that, but like that'd be enunciated different, like Peter or like or something like that. But it sounded like it was just Peter, so we'll just go with Peter. So Peter, Elena Kovac's dad, him and Alexei seem like they're the only ones who know all the players involved. Everyone else seems to be, once again, like on a need-to-know basis. So, and Luca was able to trick Mikhail into saying, that's like, right, give me a list of names. Alexei's already spilling names, but I was like, but you're telling him you don't have any names if you're up there asking him for names. But I love that Luca specified, like, we need to confirm whether Alexei's names are true or not. But Mikhail was like, I don't know any names. And it's like, all right, you might serve like some time into the prison or whatever, but, it's better than literally catching a bullet or just being labeled as a, full-blown traitor. So, but in his mind, it's like, right, I just wanted to bring back, I wanted a country that I could be proud of, because he's like, this country is just full of cowards and bureaucrats, because they feel like that the people, once again, Russia, in their mind, it's like Russia has lost its backbone, its fire, what made it such a fearsome country to begin with when it was the Soviet Union. But and I love that line from Luca where he was like, yes, rather than being the man, you wanted a country you can be proud of, rather than being the man that it could be proud of. And Luca puts a bullet in his head. So, and I wonder, does he also stay that because of a little bit of his own circumstances, because of what he had to do in the past, which we did get a little flashback. The first person he talked to, it turns out that was Peter, like all those years ago. I was like, interesting. And one of the other high-ranking officers ended up shooting him. I don't know, I guess assumed he was dead after he fell down the stairs, because he was kind of like, hey, this isn't us killing the enemies. These are people, we're killing our own people. We're killing fellow Russians because we're being ordered to. But it's like the people in Russia, like those are bureaucrats. They don't know what it's like, kind of boots on the ground type of situation. The work they're doing here, this whole call project, it's like this is for the Soviet Union. And it's like they're just trying to save face. They're doing their own thing, and we're killing Russians for it. He caught a bullet for it. So. And switching over to the Czech Republic side of things, Jim, obviously they're investigating Radic, and they're also, I don't know if, at least in the confines of the episode, they never expressly were like, oh, his wife is the lady we saw, because they wouldn't know, because they can't get good enough footage. They know, like, hey, that's the guy, Kessel, who was accused of being the shooter, for Dmitry Shooter. It's like, yes, but they probably didn't get a good enough picture. Like, they know, like, hey, if Radic is a part of this, I don't think they know for sure his wife Yana is a part of it or not. They're probably just waited till she left with their daughter to kind of like sneak around, and he found like a picture from like a military kind of it was like a military defense school or something like that, and it's a picture of Peter and Radic. So he was even asking Elena, like, oh, so how did you pick Radic? She was like, yeah, I some people like kind of came as recommendation. She's like, he was someone that served in Afghanistan. Like, he's someone that was like a decorated like hero, like soldier. So she kind of made it seem like it was just her decision. And that's why Guerrero was asking, because he's like, could it be like her father influenced that? Because it's like, right, how kind of also playing into the notion of how much sway does her father have over her, especially if he's kind of part of this. So later on, Greer sits down with him and talks to him, and you know, it's a whole conversation about Radic. And it's like, yeah, like, did he show any tendencies to kind of be potentially a traitor? And it's like, no, he had very like anti-Russian views. It's like he learned Russian just so he can like pass his like NATO thing or whatever. So it wasn't like a, you know, because Jim also kind of was like, oh yeah, you're Russian, aren't you? And he's like, yes, because his mom, it was Jewish, and she was going to go somewhere else, but ended up in Czechoslovakia, and that's kind of why they've been here since, you know? It was just a situation to get out of the situation in Russia, so that's the only reason why they're there. But obviously we know he went back to Russia at some point in time because of the whole past stuff, but once again, that's him hiding a lot of stuff. So he's kind of making it, I guess, kind of implying like, oh yeah, like I am Russian. Once again, playing into the whole like Elena's Russian, she just doesn't know it. Maybe she thinks she's Czech. Well, she was Czechoslovakian born, maybe. I mean, maybe she was born in Russia, but they made it seem like she was born in Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic now, you know, so but him and Jim had that, like, Jim's keeping it close to his vest, asking these questions, but it's like, because he's still trying to suss out whether or not Peter's someone he should be concerned about. But I love that because it ties into the title of the episode, but it was the name, what was it, like, it was like, maybe the title something like maybe like holds our deaths or something like that. And he was like, for every hour we're alive that holds our deaths or something like that. I was like, oh, that was like very poetically spoken. And I'm butchering the phrasing because I can't remember off the top of my head. But, so all the while this is happening, I did not realize and piece it together who Levin was. I didn't realize. I was like, oh yeah, that's the guy that was with Peter last episode. I was like, right, he's one of the financier backers in all of this. I mean, I think that's kind of his main motivation behind this. It's like, you know, he's the one that's actually setting up the whole smuggling the uranium. So, but obviously getting to this guy is not going to be easy because he's a very like stays on alert, kind of doesn't leave. Like he doesn't, unless you're like very specific people, he doesn't leave to go to you. You have to kind of come to him. And even Mike can't just contact him out of the blue. It's like that guy needs to invite you in. And they ended up having this interesting back and forth, him and Jack, about the whole, how obviously Jack's on his own and just kind of dealing with the whole aspect of, yeah, I'm literally labeled as a traitor, like I'm being hunted for treason, which Mike is like, yeah, that's why I went in a more private sector. You kind of have to get caught up into politics and BS. Complicated thing is you do get in, like, run in circles with like some very bad people, like I said, like 11, for example. But yeah, I love the roundabout way they went about kind of, it's like, right, we're putting him in a situation where he gets scared and paranoid because he's already a very skittish person. All you have to do is aggravate that very skittish nature of his and make it so that he has to call Mike for help. That's how you get to him, by having him come to you. So the fact is they took his right-hand guy, George, which I love when he hit Mike with the bag. Mike's like, seriously? Come on! Why would you do it? He's just like, God, it's like, I mean, the guy got paranoid. It's like, why are you so mad at him kind of hitting you in the face with the, like, I love that just pissed Mike off so much. He's like, God, seriously? Like, did you really need to do that? So it's like, you are taking the guy hostage, so. But, yeah, make him paranoid. They set up that car thing and made it seem like, oh, there was a beeping, like it was a bomb going off. Jack across in the building staring at him with a camera, making him uneasy. Like, all those things just to kind of make him paranoid and made him crazy and made him call Mike, and Mike brings him in. So it's like, right, we know you're with Alexei. The fact of the matter is, I mean, even the police chief here, who he has control of, won't back you, considering your ties to terrorism. I was like, oh, what's going on there? And it's like, is it because of all this? It's like, oh no, the bank account he deposited that $100,000 that Mike asked him to, yeah, it went to an ISIS-owned bank account. I'm like, oh wow, they screwed you over. So it's like, yeah, there's no hiding from that, you know? It's like, because I think they even said, like, the whole uranium thing, it's like, yeah, once that kind of goes, like, no country's going to shelter you. That's why he's in Budapest in the first place, because it's it's a country that all the other countries that want him can't get extradition rights to him in Budapest. So, but yeah, I kind of backed this into a corner. The uranium situation is going down specifically in Russia, so I'm assuming that's going to be like a lot harder to deal with. I don't know if like Jack's going to try and sneak into Russia to kind of stop that, but it's like, yeah, that's kind of happening in their back door. Phrasing, like it's not, you get what I'm trying to say, like that backyard is kind of what I'm trying to say. It's like, yeah, it's on their own home turf. It's where the uranium is going to be dropped off, because Alexei's going to go try and pick it up. But obviously Mikhail's kind of been removed from the picture. They're worried about Levin, but Peter's like, Dad, don't worry about that. And when Alexei was like, yeah, I don't trust anyone right now, because that was the advice Luca gave him. It's like, right, people at the top, they can't trust anyone else. Everyone else has allies. So he's in a position of like not trusting anyone, which even Peter's like, yeah, that's good. Finally, you're learning. So, because getting the uranium, as Peter puts it, is the tipping point. It's like, right, it's crucial to the plan, but that's really important. It's a big step of like setting this all up, because by getting the uranium, you're that much closer to the so-called project being like complete, and they're able to kind of make the moves that they want to make. There was even that line from and it was a double meaning, and obviously she won't catch the double meaning, but we catch it. It's when Peter was talking to his daughter, when he was saying to Elena, like, right, like looking at the missiles that NATO put in the Czech Republic, and he's like, yeah, they're ugly, but you're doing the right thing. Even if you don't live long enough to see the aftermath of it, it's like kind of implying like what, making her believe that's about all of this, but it's more so about the greater cause that he's a part of. So whether or not they're just like the two top dogs, because I would assume that this is his baby and Alexei's just someone that followed through because he believed. Like, I guess, like, once again, we don't know how Peter kind of, like, whether he is like the sole person who put this together, or like how this whole so-called like Project Resurrection came to be. And I mean, how long have they been planning this? I mean, maybe the argument could be ever since Peter survived that whole situation, that terrible accident, that maybe I obviously had to, I paused with terrible accident, you know, to kind of imply the quotes that are there. But maybe ever since surviving that, he's never let that go, especially because he's kind of had to watch from the outside as Russia's turned into what it is, and in his mind, once again, it's not the Russia that he wants or he believes in so wholeheartedly. So then there's also the Miller and Wright situation. So Wright's kind of getting grilled by Miller, being like, right, so when did you know, and what did you know, and when did you know it? It's like, okay, she's like, Jack is one of our people. I don't think, for our own sake, I don't think we should leave. Was it NDS or NSD? We shouldn't let them be the ones kind of bringing Jack in. That should kind of be on us, because it's like, right, Jack was doing that on like a non-sanctioned thing, but right, it's like, yeah, but we know how this whole thing can play out, and maybe later on down the road we are going to want it like, it wasn't official, but maybe we're going to want to say it was later on, to kind of save face type of situation. But and she tells Miller everything that Jack had, told her last episode. It's like, oh, where's this source of information? It's like, it's Luca, which is like, cool. Jack is getting played by one of Russia's best, is kind of like the implication. So that's why he doesn't want to believe. But once again, even Wright was like, dude, it's Luca. Like, we can't trust anything that comes. I mean, once again, Zoya's one thing, it being Luca is another thing completely, just because of his reputation and his history. So Miller isn't willing to listen. It's kind of like, so you need to take down Jack, and if you don't, once again, it's going to be your head on a swivel alongside of his. So like, if you don't find him, like, I'll send someone else there to do it, who will do a better job of it. So later, Jack does call her about the information, and it's like, right, he wants to be brought in on this. Like, he probably wants to be like, all right, let's put all that aside. Like, bring me into this. Like, if I'm calling you, I'm telling you all about where the uranium is and stuff like that. What's going to happen? It's like, yeah, and even Levin's going to be be an asset to us. So, but Wright's kind of like, right, I can't really. I'm not going to sacrifice my career and my livelihood for you, but he's like, I'm on the right side of things. He's like, I'm just asking you to do the right thing. And she's like, well, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. So kind of potentially turn himself in. So we'll see what Jack does. I guess it really just depends, because obviously he has a lot of trust issues with Elizabeth, Wright, but and Wright kind of it's right back in that situation for her. Plus, the heat she's catching from Miller. So we'll see how that plays out. Whether Jack really kind of lets things play out that way, or what. We'll ultimately have to wait to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.